Today's topic is going to be tools you can use navigating the scholarly communication landscape with Scopus. And my name is Jaibat, and I am the engineering librarian for scholarly communications here at Drexel. And I want to give you a little bit of background why we thought of this particular topic as something critical for our students and also some graduate students and some new faculty members. In particular, is our students are constantly being asked to write a peer-reviewed scholarly paper with, or even look at the conference papers and so on. And a lot of times the students are not familiar with what exactly is a scholarly paper, what exactly is a peer review process, and how in one place we can discover all of this and find all of this. And the Scopus can be a good tool to do that. So I found this very interesting link at what are scientific journals at apa.org, and it explains very nicely what a peer review process is. It's mainly two or more reviewers evaluate manuscripts for potential publication. Request for review comes from the journal editors. Reviewers are carefully selected based on their scientific expertise, research area, and lack of bias toward the authors. What happens is we have a lot of students who are working in the lab. We have undergraduate students who are working in the lab, and often they are requested to think about publishing their paper in a peer-reviewed journal. But sometimes they don't know about how to do that. And they need to understand that when there is a research experiment that is happening, when they want to publish this paper, they have to follow the policies of that journal where they want to publish. It has to be peer reviewed, and many times these reviewers are requiring them to also submit corrections based upon their experiments. And reviewers are also carefully selected based upon their scientific expertise. And it's a double-blind review process, so that the researchers do not know who the reviewers are, and the reviewers do not know who these researchers are. So it's a completely anonymous uh, uh, because they want to avoid the bias. Double-blind review process. Editor reads the manuscript and the viewer's comments to make a determination as to whether the manuscript should be rejected, revised, and resubmitted for further review. And so it is a long process, and it can be in a different forms. This scholarly communication can happen. And how do we communicate this scholarly universe? How do the scientists all over the world globally are able to discover and find these different types of sources? And what are these different types of sources? And how can Scopus, a database that Max is going to also talk about later on, using actual demo in finding these papers? So this will be a great experience for all of you to understand how the Scopus works, and while at the same time how you can discover these peer-reviewed journal articles, scientific conference papers, and so on. In today's discussion, we are mainly going to be focusing on journal articles, scientific conference, but Scopus can find all of these as well. And it can be used to do a very thorough literature review and find articles in different formats. So what are the different types of format that researchers use? Original research papers or peer-reviewed research papers, we just described how that works. Dissertations, PhD thesis, and how do we access them as well. Review articles, what is the difference between research paper versus review paper versus a conference paper? All these different types of format that students and faculty members and the researchers will be looking at. Books, monographs, and data sets as well. And this particular link that you see at the bottom of the page has this nice information about these different types of format that researchers use. Original research papers may include reports of original research. It describes research, and the results are published in academic journals. Research paper contains different sections which relate to the steps of the scientific method. Scientific journals disseminate research findings, say, in different disciplines through scholarly articles. So this is an interdisciplinary way that Scopus can also help you find papers in all different interconnected interdisciplinary research areas. It's a powerful tool. Reviews of the literatures can find proposals of new but untested theories or opinion pieces can be found. And this is also, I have put a link there to find more details about this. What does a research paper contain? Has titles, authors, abstract, summary of the experiment, summary of the paper, and a lot of times by reading the abstract and summary, students can realize, faculty can think about, well, this is an important paper, this is something I really want to read, and they can go about getting the full paper. It has introduction, materials and methods used, what were the findings of those experiments, what were the results. It will have a lot of charts and graphs and calculations and so on. Discussion, findings, conclusion, acknowledgements, references, figures, and tables. Examples of a research paper. So here's a link to a paper, and I have included a small screenshot of this. It is just an abstract, but if you see on the right, you can see a link to download, where you can be able to download the full paper. It has different sections that I described earlier. It has introduction, results, discussion, methods. So if you want to go to the methods section, you can go directly from methods section. If you want to see what references were used when this paper was published by these authors, you can also click on the references. And so it is very important for the authors and the researchers to cite and document all the work they have referred to. Could be a journal article, could be a website, could be a book, could be a data set. All those references have to be entered in the list of references if they have used those references. Very, very important. It also is section on ethics declaration, a lot of also the section on figures, images used, and so on. So if you click on download PDF, you will get the full paper, full research paper. It is an open access publication, meaning that anyone all over the world can be able to access this paper in full text. And it is from the journal called Scientific Reports, and that is the complete citation. Next, something I also want to illustrate is the accessing dissertations. Our PhD students are always looking for examples of finding thesis and thesis manual, and how to use that manual to make sure that they are, when they're writing their doctoral thesis or master's thesis, they're following the format. So doctoral thesis dissertation is an extended written treatise that represents original results and interpretations of unique investigations by the degree candidate. It is required as partial fulfillment for advanced and professional degrees at Drexel. And there is also brief information about master's thesis. And what is the difference between master's thesis and doctoral thesis? And all these details are available at the link above. And here is an example of a Drexel thesis by one of our PhD students. And this is the link. And you can actually click on this and you will see the full dissertation from this particular, from our website here. And you can see just a sample screenshot here, listing of tables, figures, abstract, and chapters, and so on. So there are a number of chapters, and you will see the acknowledgements section also there. Review paper. In several classes, students are actually asked to do review a particular topic. And in that case, they will have to look at different databases and find reviews on that particular topic before they go to research. And why they have to do this? Because they want to understand the current background of that topic and what led to that particular research so far based upon the previously published papers. A review article summarizes a particular field of study and places the recent research in context. It provides an overview and is an excellent introduction to a subject area. Several references are used in a review article and are very helpful as they lead to more in-depth research later on. Many databases also have limits or filters to search for review articles, for example, Scopus. So you can filter by review articles so that you can only pull up articles that are review papers. And you can also search by keywords like review article, survey, overview, summary in discovery platforms like Dragon Search that we have. And this particular example, I'm going to go in little more details to show you why this is a review paper. This is from a journal called Neuroscience and Biobehavioral Reviews. And you can notice that reviews in the title of the journal itself indicates that it could be a lot of review papers here. You will also see here that there's a review article listed here. The authors are listed here, and article information, what it contains, what are the keywords used. And keywords are very, very important. And we strongly encourage students and everyone to think about keywords, build a vocabulary of research terms of those keywords so that you can be able to find more relevant papers by using those keywords. And abstract. And I'm having one more example from these papers. So you can see here's the introduction section here. You will see all these references included here. So in this particular case, they're using author and year type of a reference. So you'll see these authors listed. There's so many authors just in the researchers are listed in this just the one portion of the introduction page, and all those references will be listed in the end of the paper. And it also has a document object identifier DOI, and this number DOI and this link means that this is a unique document identifier assigned to this paper. So that is how you can also search by document identifier to find the full papers. And you can see so many references are listed here. This is again the fraction of that review page. There are more than 100 references sometimes you'll find in the review paper. So you can do a very comprehensive review of the particular subject, and then based upon that you will determine whether your project requires something new and how you can implement new methods to come up with completely new research in your experiment. And then we'll talk briefly about conference paper. A lot of our computer science students or even electrical engineering and other disciplines, they have to refer to a lot of good conference papers. IEEE, for example, has collections of conference proceedings available. And it is a great way to try out new ideas, quick way to share new knowledge. Conference paper can be written document and a presentation delivered at a conference event. You're invited to go for the conference, or you apply for the conference. You get a travel grant from your department, and you can also search for travel grants using different databases that we have. And sometimes your faculty advisor can also recommend you to go to a conference. It's a great way to experiment and share your knowledge that you gain through your results. And at the same time, you're as a new student, new graduate student, new undergraduate student, new and advanced undergraduate student, you're learning about how to present at a conference. It's a great networking tool. And again, in some conferences, there is a peer review involved. For example, in IEEE, it requires peer review. Introduce your work to colleagues during a presentation. You gain a lot of feedback, and at the same time, you're able to connect with different scholars they attend your conference session, and resulting in dialogue later on. Making connections. And in this today's world of collaborative global partnerships in interdisciplinary areas, this is a great way to learn to present as well as write a conference paper. And I have a link here for the structure for IEEE conference paper here, which has title, abstract. A lot of times your research is funded by some agencies or industries. You need to include that funding note. You have introduction, methods, results, discussion, conclusion, acknowledgement, and references. And conferences are somewhat quicker way to share your findings in reputed conferences. And here is one example of a conference paper: implementation of virtual reality-based personal basketball team practice equipment. And you can see there are at least 5 authors listed here. Um, it looks like they are from Japan, and the School of Engineering. So you can see how the international research also entering in the global conference platforms, so that all over the people who are able to access research from different countries as well. Some example of abstracts, keywords are given, and so on. And this is very interesting because how to read a research paper is very important. And for all new graduate students, they need some tips in actually how to read a research paper. A research paper contains a dense amount of information. By actually reading the paper, they're also learning about how to write a paper when the time comes. And of course, their senior graduate students, their faculty advisors, we have a writing center, they can help them to write a good paper. And it also requires practice and thinking and self-reflection, editing, and so on. When I wrote my thesis the first time and when I submitted it to my advisor, when I got it back, it was in each page there were like 10 to 15 comments, and the requirements to change something was there. So a lot of corrections. It always come, and it is good because ultimately you're going to end up with writing a good paper or a thesis. Read papers with the intention to get the most out of them. If you are interested in the results of methodologies, then focus your attention on that specific section of the paper. And here is a link from the scientistfoundation.com website that has some good tips on how to read a research paper. And always when you become expert searchers like in Scopus and other databases, you will be able to pull up a lot of good papers by reading them, by looking at their format, by looking at the publisher policies, what is expected in that paper. You will learn to write a good paper. And I briefly introduce Scopus, and then we'll introduce Max for the demo of Scopus. It is a Scopus is a source net neutral, expert curated abstract and citation database that places powerful discovery and analytics tools in the hands of researchers. It's a comprehensive interdisciplinary resource for finding peer-reviewed research, irrespective of discipline, including conference papers as well. And as briefly, Scopus contains more than 82 million items, more than 25,000 serial articles, more than 200,000 books, and so many conference papers, author profiles, and so on. So big collection. It also has 1.7 billion cited references dating back to 1970 with more than 7,000 publishers. And these are little tips here that you can see. And I'm not going to go in depth because Max is going to cover it well. Just give you some tips on how to access Scopus from the library homepage. Go to our engineering library guide. Under electronic database section, you will see a link to Scopus, and then you can be able to just explore using latest research about your topic, from scientific journals to conferences. You can perform literature reviews and research. You can refine your search results, quick look at more relevant information, save results, search results, create search histories, and you can create an alerting mechanism so that whenever a new article is published, you will be notified. And here is Scopus demo. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm inviting Max now to do a demo on Scopus. Thank you, and we'll have questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jay. So as Jay said, my name is Max Nazario. I am a representative from Elsevier, and I'm here to talk a little bit more about Scopus, which, as Jay has mentioned, is an abstract and citation database that's made available to you through Drexel. So just a very brief overview. I know Jay did show the slide. You are able to see my screen, right, Jay?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. And so Jay I know, showed this slide already, but just to give you a sense of some of the information that's included in Scopus, Elsevier is also known as a publisher. However, the information that's in Scopus is, like Jay said, source neutral. It's coming from over 7,000 different publishers, from over 25,000 different journals, hundreds of thousands of books, and millions of conference papers are included in there. So it's a really enormous trove of information that you as researchers and students at Drexel have access to. This gives you a little bit more information about, by the numbers of where the information is um, spread across within Scopus. So you'll see that there isn't really any main concentration in terms of, it may be a little hard to see for the size of the text, but there isn't really any main concentration for between the physical sciences, health sciences, social sciences, or life sciences. There is thousands of journals that are available in each one of those, and totaling over 25,000 different journals total. And there are, like I said, hundreds of thousands of books that are available in there, and millions of conference papers. Those conference papers are primarily focused in engineering, math, physics, and computer science, and those books are primarily focused in social sciences, arts, and humanities. And the reason for that is because Scopus emphasizes including what we call the version of record of research in Scopus. So for many disciplines, that is going to be a peer-reviewed journal that's considered the quote-unquote version of record, the final, most helpful version for researchers. But in other fields like math, engineering, etc., that isn't always the main outlet for presenting one's research. So I will go over very briefly. In order to get into Scopus, you'll want to start from the Drexel Library website. So that would be library.drexel.edu. On this main page, you can find a link. That's the easiest way to get there would be going to the databases A to Z. And you can go over here to search for Scopus under S. Clicking this, and you'll then be required to sign in order to get access. I am using my own instance of Scopus, so there will be some slight differences, but overall the user experience is going to be the same. So here's what the Scopus main user page looks like. You'll see that there are 3 different main options for performing a search. There's a document search, an author search, and an affiliation search. Pretty straightforward as for what each of those means. To get started, we'll talk about a little bit about the document search. So when you're performing a document search in Scopus, you do need to specify where it is that you want Scopus to search. By default, these are the ones that are included here in the basic search. But if you are looking for a more powerful search functionality and with more places to search within, you can also use the advanced document search, which is available down here below. But for now, we'll just go ahead and do a basic search in the title, abstract, and keywords. I'm going to use a sample search string here. And you'll notice that I'm using quotes here because I'm searching for 3 words that I'm looking for as a phrase. If I were to simply enter metal organic framework without those quotes, what Scopus would then do is search for metal, organic, and framework, all of those together in anywhere within either the abstract, title, or keywords. So I will go ahead and click search just to give you a sense of what you see when you do perform a search. So these are the results that we see up at the top. We can see the number of results, as well as just a rehash of the search string that we've just entered. And you usually want to double check this just to make sure that it's processing your string the way that you would expected it to. Again, if I hadn't included those quotation marks, for example, it would not have searched for that entire phrase. It would have searched for those terms individually. Over at right, we can see the list of publications that have been returned by this search, and I have various options in order to sort those up here. And I also have the option over at the left to filter these results. So Jay did speak a little bit about all of the different forms of research that are available. And within Scopus, you do also have the ability to search those document types as well. So if you only wanted to see research articles, you could search for articles. If you only wanted to see review papers, as another example, you could then select that and either do limit to or exclude. In this case, I will go ahead and do review papers. Then what you'll notice here at the top is it has just modified my search string in order to give me, to let me know what it is that I just searched for. And I will go ahead and enter one of these document details pages to give you an idea of, again, the information that's included within Scopus. So for every document that is included in Scopus, it's going to be indexing the primary citation information, like the title, abstract, keywords, where was it published, when was it published, who are the authors who were included in it, and you can see all of that information by scrolling through here. And you can see there is a good amount of information that's included in here. Scopus does not index. One thing I do want to mention: it does not index the full text of an article. However, it does give you options to access the full text, and mainly you'll see when you're working from the Drexel website, you'll see different options here from the ones that I see. You'll mainly see Find It at Drexel, which you can then click to, and you can see options for accessing full text. Over at the left, you can see some information about the article level metrics. So I see this paper, as you can tell, is an extremely impactful, highly cited paper, has over 6,000 citations that have been picked up in Scopus. And scrolling down, you can see those documents that are citing this paper. If this is your paper and you want to keep tabs on the citations of your documents, you can also set alerts as well as save searches. But those, just for a word of caution, you will want to make sure that you are signed into Scopus in order to get access to all of those features, including saving searches, saving lists, and creating any kinds of alerts for your email. Scopus also includes some other metrics, such as the field-weighted citation impact. Field-weighted citation impact being essentially a factor of comparing this document to other papers in its field. In this case, the field-weighted citation impact is 24, meaning this paper is 24 times as cited as the average paper in its given field. And you can also see some information from the PlumX metrics. PlumX is another a way to get a feel for the engagement with a piece of research beyond just the literature, beyond just being cited in other papers. How is it being viewed online? Is it being mentioned in the news, for example, or is it being shared on social media? And you can then click View Details in order to get more information about those PlumX metrics as well. Whenever you are in Scopus, you always have the option to click an author's name. Alternatively, if you want to view a specific author rather than going a roundabout way, starting from a document or another page, you can also, again, from search, we also have the ability to search by author, and you can search for a specific person. Every author within Scopus has a customized, created author profile page. Here's an example of one author's profile page, which gives you an overview of that researcher's output. You can see over time how many documents have they published and how many citations have they received. At left, you can see information about the author level metrics. How many documents have they published that are indexed within Scopus, and how many citations have those documents received within Scopus. You can also see very quickly the H-index of a given author. So if you are a faculty member and you want to be able to track your H-index, or if you're an administrator and you want to be able to identify the H-index for faculty members who are up for tenure, for example, you can also view that H-index, and you can see the H-index graph. The H-index, for those maybe who are not quite familiar, it is a number that essentially says how many documents does this author have that have been cited that many number of times. So in this case, this author, who has a very high H-index of 154, this author has published 154 documents that have at least 154 citations. So this tends to be a useful metric for understanding the level of impact and as well as the level of the research footprint that an individual author will have. So you can get that information all within the author profile. Scrolling down, you can again see all of the documents that have been picked up for this individual author. You also have the ability to sort those and view those individually by linking out to them. And something new within Scopus, one of the document types that Jay did touch upon or I don't believe he actually did touch upon, is preprints. Preprints are, of course, documents that are going to be submitted or are likely to be submitted or maybe won't be submitted to a peer-reviewed journal. It's essentially similar in form to a research article. However, it's not, rather than being submitted to a journal and published by that journal after after going through peer review, preprints are able to be published publicly on a preprint server such as SSRN, Archive, or BioArchive, and anybody who has access to that server can then access those. Recently, Scopus began including preprints on author profiles. They are not searchable as full disclosure. However, when you are looking at an author's profile, if they have shared any preprints in these four main preprint servers, Archive, BioArchive, ChemArchive, or MedArchive, those will be pulled into that author's profile on Scopus. We are also adding in the coming months preprints from SSRN, which is another preprint server that is fairly popular. Lastly, I know that we are running just a little bit over time. I do want to very briefly touch upon the sources that are available within Scopus, which you can see up here at the top. So like I said, Scopus has a tremendous amount of information within it, pulling from millions of different places. Scopus does also give you the ability, in order to better understand those individual sources and examine them more closely. So one of the ways that you can do that is by downloading the entirety of the Scopus source list, which you can do over here with this link over on right. But if you another option, if you want to evaluate journals individually, is you can open up the page, the source details page for that page, or excuse me, for that source. So in this case, this is a highly impactful oncology journal that is that we'll very briefly just go over here. When you're looking through this, this will give you information about the publication years, the coverage years for Scopus that are included in its index, as well as information about the site score, SJR, and SNP. So these are essentially measures of impact and prestige for a journal. Site score is comparable to a journal impact factor, which other people may be a little bit more familiar with. But site score has its own methodology, which it talks about a little bit here. So essentially, it's taking the number of citations in the last 4 years and dividing those by the number of documents that were published in that journal over the last 4 years, and that gives you an idea of the site score. 435 is in fact one of the highest site scores of all journals that are available within Scopus. SJR and SNP are not specific to Scopus, and I can give more information about those if there's interest. But just in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and move on just very briefly to talk a little bit about some of the other features that Scopus has. Scopus also gives you uses this site score metric in order to rank different journals in a given subject area, so and allows you to compare them. And so the reason why one of the ways in which that is that's helpful is that if you are a researcher or a research student who's working with a PI and you have a paper and you want to submit it somewhere, but you want to make sure that the journal that you're submitting it to is of high enough prestige or is of appropriate level for the paper, for the research that you're looking to publish, you can use the Scopus sources list in order to evaluate that. So in this example, like I said, this is the #1 most impactful journal in oncology. So obviously in cases like those, the papers that they're going to be looking to publish are going to be very, very high impact research that are going to be widely cited, and they're going to be very selective. So it gives you some insight in order to help you choose where it is that you want to publish your paper. You can also search rather than searching for a specific title or specific piece of a specific journal, you can instead search by subject area. So if you are looking for chemical engineering journals, you can search using that subject area, and then scrolling down, you can see all of the different titles that that regularly publish in the chemical engineering space. And if you want to understand a little bit more about a journal, you can then click that paper, or you can then click that journal's page. You can view all of those documents that are being published in that journal, so you can see how does my research compare to what is being published in this journal. And you can also get information about the site score. How does it compare to other journals in this field? And you can also get information about the history of that site score in order to understand, is this journal becoming more impactful? Is it becoming less impactful, as an example? And one last thing that I do want to mention about these ranks, although there are a lot of journals in Scopus, and there are journals that are of course going to appear at the lower end of any site score rank, we do want to, I do want to stress that all of the information that's in Scopus is vetted by a content selection and advisory board. And the process for evaluating those journals is an ongoing process. So as journals become less impactful, or as their publishing practices change, there is a reevaluation process in order to determine whether or not that title should still be indexed within Scopus. And so for that reason, you can trust that even if a journal is maybe on the lower end of the site score rank, it does not mean it is a junk journal, for example. It essentially means that it may be that the papers that are being published in it are not quite as widely cited. So with that, I know that that was a very quick whirlwind introduction, and I know that we are just a little bit over time with 10 minutes past the half hour, but we do have some more time. I have
Max,
more time, I should say,
Max,
to
we
answer any
have
questions.
until 1 o'clock. So
Oh, do we have one until 1 o'clock? Oh, okay.
Yes, we have the whole hour.
Oh, okay, excellent. Okay, well, I will pause. I will still pause there then, and I will go ahead and I think we have some questions in the chat. Do we want to go ahead and maybe I can go ahead and take a couple of questions?
No, I think these are just the comments by Stacy about links that she posted from my presentation earlier.
Okay, excellent.
So one question I do have is how do we filter by conference papers, or if you're only looking for open access papers in a particular topic, can you able to find open access papers that can be accessed by others who don't have access to Scopus?
Yes, you can. So Scopus now has a couple, Scopus has, the best way to do that is going to be by running your search for the topic that you're looking to run. And you can then identify, and then you can identify the document types that you're looking to select. So in this case, conference papers or conference reviews, you can then limit to those using these filters over here at the right, or over at the left. And for open access, that's actually a pretty recent addition to the filtering options that are available on Scopus. You then actually have the ability to identify whether or not a paper is accessible via gold open access, whether or not it's available in a repository. So the best way to answer your question, Jay, if you're looking to find papers that you can then share with colleagues in an open way without having to have anyone needing any kind of subscription, you'd then want to limit that to gold. Things that are published gold or hybrid gold, and then you can open up these documents, and then if you were to go to the publisher website or to a link resolver, you can then find the full text. And you will not need any kind of subscription in order to get access to those.
Okay, that's great.
And that said, there are some other options that are included here under open access, but those, generally speaking, the green open access is going to mean that it's available in a repository somewhere. So you would then have to be able to find the repository that it's available within, because we don't quite have the outward linking to repository set up just yet. And bronze OA tends to be a temporary open access, so it's not necessarily open access permanently. So the most reliable ones are going to be the gold and the hybrid gold for the use case you mentioned, Jay.
Okay.
All right.
Let us see if audience have any questions. Then if not, then I have one or two more questions.
Do we have any questions from the audience? We haven't.
Doesn't look like there's anything in chat, but I will keep an eye on it.
Okay, great.
Okay, then the one question that I have is, you mentioned something about site score.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the same thing like in Web of Science, there is an impact factor. So is it the same thing or is this something different measure?
So they are different measures. So the methodologies for the two of them are different. Journal impact factor is specifically included, is only available for Web of Science journals and for only a subset of Web of Science journals. The methodologies for the two of them are similar, but some of the ways in which they differ is, so this gives you an overview of what site score is referring to. But the years that are considered within site score are different from the ones that are considered within journal impact factor. So for journal impact factor, if I remember correctly, would essentially be looking at the documents that were published in, I believe, the last 3 years and dividing, so in this case, looking at 2016 through 2018, I believe it's using those documents and dividing and using and comparing that to the number of citations in 2019. There is also some difference in the publication types that are used as well. The publication, I know that site score limits itself to the most highly impactful or most highly cited journal document types, which would be review papers, articles, and conference papers. So in the case of correspondence, so letters or any kinds of notes or anything of those types, those are not counted within any of site scores calculations, but with a journal impact factor that is taken into consideration, just because it's ultimately just the methodology is slightly different.
Okay. Thank you, Max. I think there are a couple of questions in the chat.
Yes.
One is, what are some other ways to limit and define subjects besides quotation marks? And along the same line, how do we can search keywords in a way that we can identify it should include keyword 1 and keyword 2, and also keyword 3 or keyword 4. So basically, how do we use Boolean searching and things like that?
Yes, excellent. So I'll go ahead. I'll try to answer Ruth's question first, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it. So Ruth, so you are asking essentially if you're looking to search for a topic and you want to look beyond just that full phrase. Do you want to be able to search like variations on that phrase? Am I understanding that question correctly?
I think it's a more general question. Sure. That I don't fully understand how different I mean, I guess it's the Boolean search thing, how different ways of using punctuation in keyword searches, how that is understood by the search engine so that I can better, make what I'm doing get what I'm wanting.
Right. So the main ways that you would want to do the main ways that Scopus uses punctuation would be the quotation marks, which is basically telling Scopus, I want to search for this entire phrase exactly as I'm typing it. You also can search. Scopus does have some adjustments that it will make to a search phrase when you enter it. So as an example, if I typed again metal organic framework, and if I were to use these, I'll zoom in just a little bit here. If I'm using these curly brackets here, that's actually going to prevent it from removing any kind of what we call stop words. So there are some common words like a, the, or words like those that are not necessarily used as helpful in a search term. It automatically removes those. But if I were to use these curly brackets, it would then be searching for this entire phrase exactly as I add it, as I mention it. Or if I were to have a hyphen here rather than a space here, and I had it in these curly brackets, it would then insist on that hyphen being there. So, rather, if I were to just have it, otherwise though, unless you are telling Scopus to use these curly brackets and look for that exactly as it's written. It will make some adjustments that are primarily ignoring punctuation. Two primary exceptions to that are going to be wildcard searching. Number one of which would be, there are two main wildcards that are common in Boolean searching. So if I wanted to look for a term like ampicillin resistance, but I also wanted to, or let's just use the word resistance instead. If I wanted to search for resistance as well as resistant, I could use a wildcard term. In this case, I'm using the wildcard of the asterisk. And so that's basically telling Scopus, you can replace this asterisk with any number of characters. It could be one character, or it could be any number of them instead, or it could be 0. The other option would be a question mark, which is basically saying that you want to, this is a wildcard that is only modifying that one individual character that is that I've replaced with a question mark. So generally speaking, the wildcard with the apostrophe is going to be more helpful because it gives you a little more flexibility. But you do also have the option of the question mark for if you were looking to limit it to only single characters. And those are really the primary ways that it uses punctuation, would be those curly brackets, quotations, and the wildcards. Okay. And we have the other question was, how do we search for keywords in a way that we identify it? It should include keyword 1 and keyword 2, and also keyword 3 or keyword 4. So that would basically require essentially a more complex search string. So in this case, I'm using the most basic search string that I possibly can, just a single term. But if I want, Scopus you have two options for building more complex strings. One of which is going to be the basic search, which basically gives you a wizard in order to help you build those terms. So you can do the add search field, and you can add a number of them within here. And then you can adjust the operators that are going to appear in between these. So in the case of your example, it looks like the way that I would type out the situation that you've presented here in the question. So it would be or. So, and I'm putting these, I'll just make these single words instead of. So it's essentially telling Scopus here, I want to search for either one of these. So either one of these keywords, and I want to search for 3. So this would give you the example that you mentioned in the chat. So where you're looking to look for either one of these keywords, but it also has to include one of these, one or the other, and it has to include both of these. So in this case, the reason why Scopus is doing that is because it's searching these two as or, and these are essentially going to become almost like their own unique like subset of the string. And then coming down here, it's going to then add both of these, and these are also going to be their own unique subset. So that's how you can do it with the basic search. But oftentimes, when you're looking to do a search like that, you may want to create them in the advanced search instead. And you'll see when I hit advanced search after entering something in the basic search, it's then going to basically take that term that I just entered in the previous one, and it's then going to make it into an advanced search or an advanced term that I can then modify myself.
You can then edit that query, right?
Yes, you can. Mm-hmm. Yes, and so if you wanted to then add and not keyword 5, you could then do that.
That's great. Max, I have one more question.
Sure.
lot of times what happens is that our PhD students, even our faculty members, are looking for some kind of collaboration and making networking with researchers in different institutions. So is it possible to limit by author affiliation field? Like I'm interested in finding collaborators from some other universities, for
Yeah,
example. Can I
absolutely.
do that in Scopus?
Yes, you can. So one of the ways that I would recommend do, again, I think one of the best ways to do that is to start from the search term or the search phrase that you're looking to do, looking for collaborators on. So as an, that example that I used before is metal organic frameworks. It's a pretty handy one. So I'll go ahead and use that one again. And so when I'm searching for this, if I'm looking to find some more information about potential collaborators. So in addition to helping you find research, Scopus is also extremely useful because it allows you to then analyze whatever search results you've just been able to retrieve. So in this, the best way, the easiest way to do that would just be by entering that search term that you're looking for and then hitting this Analyze Search Results button. And this will give you some more. This basically opens up a whole dashboard of interactive widgets that you can then use to look more closely at the results from what you have just searched for. So over here, you can see information about documents by year, but scrolling down in the example that you gave, Jay, you're looking to look for authors. So who are the authors who are publishing a great deal in this given field? You can then search here, and you can see who are the top researchers in that given field based on this search term. So I've done this search term. Who are the people who have published documents that are being returned by this term that I just entered into Scopus? And you can then see who those top authors are. And if you wanted to, you could also click the number next to their numbers next to their name, and that will then filter after all of those those terms that you just searched for, and it's going to limit them to that one researcher who you've just indicated, and you want to understand a little bit more about their research, and you can then scroll through those. So that's one way that you could do that. And another way would be to use the widget for documents by affiliation. So you can see again, where are the researchers that are doing research on this given area? And you can, again, using this documents by affiliation, it's showing you the different affiliations that are publishing the papers that were included in that search phrase that you just included. So if you wanted to see only the researchers from Northwestern University, you could then click that bar, and then that will link outward in order to show you all of these papers that are being published by that institution. Okay.
So thank you, Max. Thank you.
Of course.
And I think that there are 2 chat questions. Looks like.
Yes. So there's one more. Yeah, so there's another question about the other operators that we saw in the Scopus advanced search. And so the others are relatively straightforward. But I will go through them very briefly. And is essentially when you have 2 search terms, keyword 1 and 2, you want both of them. But you need to have both of them. If either one of them is missing, then you want to exclude that result. Or is going to be either one of them or both of them. So, but as long as it has one or the other, it will be included. And not is going to be, you want this keyword, but if it includes this one, you don't want to see it. And then the other 2 are a little more granular, or a little more useful in particular for getting really strong search results for that are as complete as they can be. So these 2 are going to be what we call proximity operators. So another one of the examples that I like to use for this is ampicillin resistance. If I were going to use these two search terms, it was Scopus, and I were going to put them in quotes, like I said, Scopus is going to look for them in this order as a phrase. If I were to use instead a proximity operator, so the one that I typically use is the W rather than the PRE. PRE essentially says they need to be close to each other, but they need to be in this specific order. And the W operator is saying that they need to be close to each other and can be in any order. So if, for example, when I do ampicillin resistance, it's basically going to look for any phrase that contains ampicillin and resistance as long as they are within 3 words of each other. So that would include terms like resistance to ampicillin, or like I said, ampicillin resistance. And then these become particularly useful when you combine them with those wildcards that we talked about earlier. So in this example, a paper may, instead of saying ampicillin resistance, it may say resistant to ampicillin, or ampicillin resistant. And so by replacing that, the end of that term with a wildcard, and using a proximity operator instead, what that will do is it's going to search for both of these terms as long as they are near each other and as near as I define using that operator that I've defined. Okay.
That's great. Thank you, Max. And maybe you want to show that slide where all the tutorials they can access that we have.
Sure. And this will also be included in, of course, in the slides that we sent around. But Jay, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah. So if you can click on the Scopus materials tutorial link, and we can just show them what they are. And there's an entire YouTube channel on wonderful ways to go deeper into Scopus. So you have a tutorial on site scroll metrics, or how to browse sources in Scopus, comparing sources, and how to create citation overviews, and how to search for an author and view their profile, how to keep track of an author. So a number of tutorials are available at this link. And in your presentation, we will send you all the slides, and you can go to that last slide, the one before that, and you will see link to all the tutorials. And there's an official, the first link is all about engineering YouTube channel, where you can also find all those different content there. So a number of things you can do with Scopus. A very powerful tool, excellent way to search. There's a lot to learn from Scopus. And one more last question, Max, I have is, a lot of times what happens is that when you're searching, you find hundreds of articles. So how do we refine it so that I can get more relevant papers?
So there are a variety of strategies that you can use for that. And you'll just want, ultimately, the results that you get from Scopus are going to depend on the quality of the term that you put in. And so you'll want, if you are looking for information that is, when you're doing that search, you're going to want to make sure that you have your search term that's being as specific as you need it. So if you're looking specifically for metal organic frameworks, but you want to understand synthesis, you'll want to make sure that you include additional search options within there. If you do run a search at any time and you find, oh, this is 40,000 results, this is way too many, let me add some additional terms within here. Rather than having to go back to edit, you can also just use this edit within search results, and you can add some additional terms with that as well. Can your search include a site score range? That is a very good question, actually. I don't believe there is a way to do that. But what you can do, if you go to the analyze search results, what you can do instead, it's not quite the same thing, but you can look at the documents by source. And yeah, that's the only one for source there. So if you go to documents by source, what you can do is if you can choose the sources that are appearing within this that search, the search results that you've just returned, and you can then compare those sources in order to view their site score. So it will automatically choose the top 10 sources that were in that previous result, but you can also add others instead if you wanted to look at the results that were in there and you wanted to. I'll go back very briefly. Apologize for that. So going here, if I'm working from analyze search results, I can choose up to 10 of these. And then I can then compare these sources using their journal bibliometrics in order to basically see the what are the documents that are what are the high impact what are the of these ones that are returning these results, how do they compare to each other based on their in this case their site score. And you can also instead choose those other bibliometrics down at the bottom, including citations. So for limiting by site score, there's not quite a way to do that directly, but there are some ways that you can kind of analyze those more closely using site score.